to our live talk on burnout, burn on. I'm Inken Schubert, and I'm the host of this event. Welcome to our event today. I'm an account manager at INSITE. INSITE is the provider of the EAP, which your company has installed. This might be Talingo ERP or Mein ERP or the short-term therapy. And as you can see, I'm not alone. I've brought a colleague, Meltem. She will take care of your questions. And I've brought an expert on the topic of mental health, Dorothea. They will introduce themselves, but before we start, let me say a few words because I want to apologize to all those who've taken part in the live talk 2 weeks ago. We had to cancel the live talk due to technical problems, but we are sure this time everything will be perfect. And so thanks for your patience and thanks that you joined us today again. Now, Meltem, I would like to pass over to you. You can tell the audience a few words about the technical equipment and give them some technical advice.
Okay, thank you, Inken. My name is Meltem Blödorn, and I'm responsible for the chat today. You can see a box, a little box on the side with question and answers, and please do not hesitate to ask questions if you have some. Only you can see. Only I can see your questions. The audience can't see if you're writing something down, and you stay completely anonymous. So that's very important to know. And I will try to include your questions as much as possible to the conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Meltem. This live talk will be recorded, but as you all take part absolutely anonymously, so you won't be seen and heard and nothing. So you can write your questions and Meltem will include them in our conversation. Dorothea, say a few words about yourself and what we are talking about today.
Thank you, Inken. I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Dorothea Kenny. I work in corporate health management and in mental health coaching with 13 years experience at the stage. I haven't always done this. I've worked in marketing and sales before and switched my area of expertise completely 13 years ago because I was fascinated by the question, what can we do in order to maintain or balance our well-being in challenging times? And I think we all agree that we are all experiencing challenging times. And that's why today I'm happy to be here to talk about a very important topic. I'm glad to see you here, and I really hope that you benefit from this live talk.
Yeah, thank you, Dorothea. We are indeed dealing with the topic which might be very personal and of high relevance for you. So please note that this won't be a scientific lecture on whatever, on mental health, on mental illness. And of course, it cannot replace an individual counseling. So if there are individual questions we can't deal with today or very special questions, you could use the EAP, the counseling offered to you if you have very individual questions. This live talk is just meant to give you some impulses, some ideas on the topic of burnout and burn on. We just want to talk about it and give you the opportunity to bring in your questions. And we've chosen this topic because being exhausted and feeling stressed out is one of the most frequent reasons why people use our counseling. And to be honest, this is no surprise. We all know the pace of work is getting faster and faster. We feel competition everywhere, the feeling of constant accessibility. Maybe we have some private burden or family commitments. All this creates pressure, and feeling stressed and exhausted has almost become normal. Sometimes it's like a general operating temperature in society. So and many people think or feel that they have a burnout or are on the brink of burnout, and that's why we wanted to talk about this. And there is another buzzword that has come up recently, and this is burn on. And so we want to have a closer look on what is burn on, what are the reasons, what is burnout, what are the reasons, what are the symptoms, what is burn on, and what's the difference between them? And of course, what can we do preventively to stay healthy, to stay strong? And that's what I want to ask our expert. And I'd like to start with the first question, Dorothea.
Yes.
We are all very familiar with stressful phases and with exhaustion, but this doesn't mean that we all suffer from burnout, does it?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Burnout has been frequently talked about over the last few years, and I do believe that maybe it has also been used a little bit inflationary. When somebody has a stressful period, some people are very quick to talk about burnout. So this is a very important question to differentiate what actually constitutes the phenomenon of burnout. We all have periods where we put in additional work, where we have stressful periods of high stress and high pressure. And it's totally normal that we are exhausted after a period like that. Even if I have a really busy full day, it's normal to be exhausted at the end of the day. So these are normal, healthy states of exhaustion. We put in a lot of effort, we're tired at the end of the day or at the end of the week. And what the main difference is that when I have a normal state of exhaustion, if I have a quiet evening or I have a relaxing weekend, I'm usually back to normal. So when we talk about burnout, there's a very big difference when it comes to that time period of relaxation. The kind of exhaustion that we talk about with burnout cannot be compensated with a relaxed evening or a relaxed weekend, because that is one of the main key characteristics. So I'd like to present some key characteristics that occur when we talk about the phenomenon of burnout. And one of them is this feeling of exhaustion. And I'm not just talking about physical exhaustion, but this mental exhaustion where you feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't concentrate anymore. I'm fed up. I'm physically exhausted, and also a social exhaustion, when you don't even go out and meet your friends anymore because you're simply too tired to even do things that you normally enjoy. So the exhaustion, when we talk about burnout, is all-encompassing all areas of your life. So that's one key characteristic. Another one is that is very particular about the burnout phenomena. It's always a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a process that can take up to a couple of years. It's definitely several months. It can take up to a couple of years. And throughout this process, people affected by this phenomenon, they develop kind of a growing inner aversion towards work. At the beginning, they're all excited and I love my job and I'm highly engaged and I want to perform, I want to see results. And throughout this exhaustion process, this turns into an inner aversion towards work, the workplace, sometimes even to cynicism. So that's a second characteristic of the burnout phenomena. A third one is decreasing work performance. Whereas at the beginning, people affected are high achievers, highly productive. Again, throughout the process, their work performance decreases. The motivation decreases, the work performance decreases. And also a fourth characteristic can be that people affected develop a sense of feeling helpless and out of control. It feels like life is flooding me and I'm just no longer in control. I can't handle this anymore. So these are key characteristics when we talk about burnout as opposed to normal exhaustion. And on top of that, of course, are a whole load of symptoms that are associated with burnout. We know of up to 130 different symptoms. For example, sleep problems happen very frequently, maybe feeling dizzy, having heart pain, having all sorts of physical pain, feeling restless, feeling high inner tension. So these key characteristics are accompanied with a whole range of mental and physical symptoms. And that's the phenomenon of burnout. And it's always a process that develops over a period of time.
But does it always have to do exclusively with a job? You said that I would feel a growing inner aversion, cynicism, decreasing performance. What do we know about the reasons of burnout? Does it always have to do, or is it the job, or is it the person, or where does it come from?
Very good question. There's no easy yes, no answer to that. Obviously, it's a little more complex than that. First of all, according to the official diagnostic criteria, it is a phenomenon that's associated with the work context. Okay, it's within the work context, but we know from burnout research, and one of the leading researchers is Dr. Christina Maslach from the University of California. She has been researching the burnout phenomenon for the last couple of decades. And in her research, she has identified certain risk factors. And if these risk factors are in place, obviously the more risk factors there are in a person's life at a particular time, the more likely they are to maybe develop a burnout. Of course, doesn't mean that they necessarily do, but just to give you maybe an example of what these risk factors look like, and of course work and the workplace is a possible risk factor, no doubt. Just to give you a few examples of risk factors in the workplace. Now, one is definitely the amount, the quantity of work. And again, important to differentiate, just because a person has a lot of work to do does not mean they're going to get burnout, because it always depends on how well is a person able to cope with the situation. Now, not only the quantity of work, but also maybe the quality or the complexity of work. Maybe I was promoted into a position, or I took over a project and I don't feel adequately qualified or trained. So the task is simply too difficult for me at this time. This can also be a risk factor. So not the quantity, but the complexity of a job. Now, what else in the work context? For example, how high is my level of influence when it comes to making decisions? Is it left up to me how I get the job done? So the result matters, how I get there, I can decide myself. That is beneficial, that is helpful. But we do know of people who are micromanaged, and they are either told in detail how to do their job. That's difficult in combination with a high workload. Or a good friend of mine is in a situation where she's in a very large corporation and decision-making just takes forever. So she can't get the job done because there's always 3-4 levels where decisions are being stuck. So that can be a potential risk factor. And as I said in the beginning, the more risk factors come together at one time, the more likely it is that ongoing overstrain can happen. So this is the workplace, and this is important. Of course, it plays a role, but it's a little bit too simple to just blame it on the work situation. Of course, companies also have to fulfill their part. Of course, they have to make sure that the circumstances within which people do their job are manageable. The work has to be manageable. Of course, there's going to be differences between people, but this is one aspect. Now let's look at the other side, because we also as people do play a role. And this is the other category of risk factors. certain personality structures are more likely, or they're more in danger to develop this state of exhaustion. To give you an example, whenever certain attitudes or beliefs become too exaggerated, that can be a problem. For example, perfectionism is something I think a lot of people understand or are familiar with. Of course, we all want to do a good job, you know, and we want to work with people that do a good job. But it's the question of, do I try and do a lot of work all at 120%? That's not going to work. You know, if a high quantity of work, I need to differentiate what's really important. Maybe one thing is so important, I give it 120, and something else, 70% is going to be enough. So this differentiation doesn't happen with some people. They just go, oh, everything has to be perfect. And this can increase, of course, the danger of exhaustion. Some people have a high level of pessimism, which can be a risk factor. And interestingly enough, that sounds initially quite positive. Some people have a high level of enthusiasm. They're like easily on fire. They're easily ignited for something. And that's, you know, I think most people would agree is a good thing. But again, whenever it's exaggerated, whenever it's too much of anything is usually not a good thing. So even a high level of enthusiasm can be a personal risk factor. So if you have the combination of, I'm in a job that is very demanding, it's challenging, there's a lot of work to do, I have high responsibility, and on the other hand, you have maybe an employee with a personality structure that is highly driven by perfectionism, not being able to say no. I think we can all imagine what's going to happen in the long run. And that's the problem. It's not a brief stressful period, but it's a mismatch. It's a mismatch of the situation that I'm in and what I'm able to deal with. If that's permanently mismatched, we have an increase. And not to forget other risk factors, of course, in my private life, there can be risk factors. Maybe I have small children at home, maybe I have elderly parents I need to look after, maybe have financial difficulties. They can also be risk factors. So yes, it's a work-related phenomena. No, it's not only the work at fault here. So we need to look at the bigger picture. It can come from, usually comes from different forces.
Okay, so the dose makes the poison. Can you say so? Okay, so what about this new word burn on? What is burn on got to do with burnout?
Yes.
What's it all about, this new word?
It's pretty much brand new. It's a term that was coined a couple of years ago in 2021, so during the pandemic, and it was coined by two a psychiatrist and a leading psychologist of a psychosomatic clinic in Germany. They were treating patients. They were treating burnout patients, and they discovered that something was a little bit unusual because these patients didn't quite fit the picture that they've so far had of burnout patients. And that's when they basically observed this a little more and came to the conclusion that there is another form that is quite different to burnout. There's a lot of parallel aspects to it, but there's some key differences. And they described burn on as being always on the verge of burnout. And that is basically one of the key differences. So the reasons can be very similar. There is a state of chronic exhaustion. So people who suffer from burn on are also in a state of chronic stress and chronic exhaustion. They show symptoms, mental, physical symptoms like sleep disorders, like headaches, like migraines, like hearing problems, whatever, you know, up to 130 symptoms. So they do show all these symptoms. But the key difference is that it doesn't end in a breakdown situation. Whereas in the burnout process, eventually, in the later stage, in the final stage of the burnout process, there is like pretty much the stopping point where because I wasn't able to pull the brakes beforehand. My system, my organism stops me. So it can literally be from one moment to the next. Sometimes it's a tiny, you know, the final drop. We all know the final drop. Maybe you just missed a flight. Maybe you don't find an important presentation anymore. And sometimes that can be the moment where it whole snaps. And that doesn't happen with burn-on. So chronic exhaustion, but they just keep going and going and going and going. People affected are chronically exhausted, but they still function. They still get their job done. And also one, yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
There's just one aspect which is also important when we talk about what is burn-on versus burnout. At the beginning, I said that one key characteristic with burnout is that people develop this inner aversion towards work, which can develop even into cynicism. People affected by burn-on don't have that. They enjoy their job, you know, they like their work. It's just not manageable anymore. And Inken, if you'll allow me, I have a quote from a person, from that a patient who was getting treatment in that psychosomatic clinic, and he basically presented a statement which I think maybe explains it quite well. If it's okay, I'm just going to read it quickly. It's only a couple of lines. And this person basically said, "I'm always on the limit. I sleep badly, I often have headaches, and I wonder where I am left in the whole thing," he says. "What speaks against burnout is that I actually enjoy my work, and ultimately I also get it done. It's simply too much. It's just too much." Maybe that boils it down quite well to what this new phenomena of burn-on actually is.
So what's lacking is this aversion against the job, what we have with burnout, and this lower efficiency in work.
Exactly. They're still high performers. They're still driven. They're still motivated. They get the job done. And this is also one of the symptoms when we talk about burn-on. They get the job done. They function in their working life. They function in their private lives. They do all the things that ought to be done, but they lose the joy of living. They don't enjoy things anymore. They function. They fulfill. They tick the box, but the enjoyment is gone.
Yeah.
And in advanced cases, you know, even the enjoyment when it comes to relaxing things. And that is one of the big problems, not just when we talk about burn-on or burnout or stress management in general. One of the big problems that we're faced is that we've unlearned to regenerate, to take breaks. Life is so demanding out there, and it's full of to-dos and full of responsibility. And yes, we achieve a lot, but what we don't do enough of is unwinding. You know, I like to think of as a wave. You know, so we have attention, we get a lot done, but then we also need to unwind, so that the next day we're able to again to perform and do a work, and the following day or in the evening we need to unwind. And during periods of high stress, what a lot of people do, and it's very understandable, okay, what can I cut? I don't have enough time. Oh, I don't need to sleep 7 hours. 6 hours will be enough. So you cut time of your sleep. Not a good idea. I can do that short term, long term, not a good idea. What else can I cut? Oh, I saw my friends 2 weeks ago. I don't need to see them again, you know? So I stopped seeing my friends regularly, you know? I stopped doing things I enjoy that recharge my battery. And that is one of the crucial points later when we talk about what we can do to prevent it. We are not machines. We need times for generation. We need to recover. We need to recharge a battery. You know, we all have a mobile phone lying beside us probably. What do we do in the evening? We make sure that this thing is charged, because, you know, you don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and have your phone only 30%. Oh my goodness, disaster. But we do that with ourselves. We forget to recharge our own battery. And that's one of the also an important component.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions in the chat. And one of that is, isn't burn on the pre-stage of a burnout?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It is like a pre-stage. So there's a couple of key differences. So the founders of the term phrased it, or they differentiated. Basically, they talk about, where's it gone? Burnout is an acute chronic exhaustion, and burn on is basically an ongoing chronic exhaustion that doesn't end in a breakdown. Essentially, it's the early stage that doesn't develop into a final stage, with a couple of key differences. So the term, you know, these two guys who coined the term, they wrote a book about it, and they titled the book "Burn On, Always on the Verge of Breakout." And I think that puts it down quite well. It's on the verge. It doesn't develop any further. It doesn't get to this point of a final breakdown, but it's on the way to getting there.
I have another question. If you always try to do things better and to accomplish something, and you always have the feeling you won't accomplish and you won't be there where you want to be. And is there like a little trick or something to get out of this burnout state of mind?
Good question.
You never reach the goal, you know. So is there a trick?
The goal. There's no quick fix, I'm afraid. There's no quick fix. It's a very good question. It's a very important question, and the answer is there's definitely no quick fix, because ultimately, what's at the base is that every one of us has a certain set of convictions and beliefs and attitudes, and some of them are not very beneficial because they're potentially exaggerated, or potentially at such a high level that it can never be achieved. And that's when it is highly, highly recommendable to basically look at my own attitudes, look at my belief system, and also to maybe take a closer look at why do I have this strong ambition? What am I trying to gain from this? Does it give me a sense of being accepted? Do I only feel loved when I perform? So that's when it can get very interesting. And at this point, Inken, I'd like to throw in the information that if you are listening here today and you feel that, yes, you have a set of belief systems which are like this inner slave driver, you know, they're with always urging you to move on, it's very beneficial to either use the EAP service if your company offers one, or go and find yourself a coach and take a look at that belief system, because that can be one of those personal risk factors that we talked about. So if you have a certain setup and work, and that meets a person with a particular particular mindset, this combination in the long run.
These are very important points, because I wanted to ask you, Inken, if you can explain if somebody has a personal issue, for example, in general, in this topic, for example, and want to talk about it. Can you explain how the way is to use the EAP for the personal issue if I have one?
Yeah, sure. And I thanks for mentioning the EAP, because I really think that this can help you if you want to think about these aspects, if you want to have a closer look on your in your inner life, in your attitudes, your beliefs, your drivers. This is really the EAP can help you. Our counselors are very experienced, and most of them are psychologists and coaches, counselors that really, really know what they are doing, and they can talk this through with you and help you and support you in these questions maybe these might be questions you don't really dare to look at alone, so you don't have to do it alone. And if you don't know how to contact us, the telephone number or the email address or the website, just ask in your HR department. They will certainly know the number, and you can contact us anytime you need us, and just talk this through with one of our counselors. I can really recommend this.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's so important, because if I don't look at that aspect of my personality, that side of my personality, which is maybe not beneficial, which increases my stress and my pressure, I can change jobs and maybe it's going to be a little bit better, but the chance is very high, because I take myself with me with my personality aspect. So some people find they change jobs because it was too much, and in the new job situation, after a while, they find themselves within the same pattern. So history repeats itself for some people. It doesn't have to be the case. It's definitely well worth looking at it, because that's something we benefit from for our private lives. It doesn't just apply to the work context, but if we take a look at what is really important to me, what drives me, what are these inner drivers that I have, it's definitely worthwhile to take a look at that.
And another question directly to that, is there something like a last call, like critical symptoms of a burnout, which are the last call to take a break from work, or to change something in your private life?
Now, good question. Again, there's a lot of it depends on, but there's some very clear warning signals that we should pay attention to. Our body, our organism, is an excellent signaling device. When you sit in your car and you reverse your car and there's a wall behind you, what happens? Beep, 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 beep. The closer you get to the wall, the louder the beeper will work. And the same applies to your organism. The more strain I put on it, the more intensive the symptoms will get. And when we talk about symptoms related to exhaustion, burn on or burnout, let's take a look at 4 different areas where we can be assertive and pay attention to. First of all, physical symptoms. So one that is very, very frequent are sleeping disorders. So either you go to bed and you drop dead the minute you put your head down, and then you wake up 2 or 3 in the morning and your head starts going crazy. You can't go back to sleep. This can be one aspect. Other people, they are extremely exhausted, but when they go to bed, they can't fall asleep because their head is going crazy. So it can be those 2 scenarios, and either way, they do not get enough regenerative sleep, and that is where the vicious cycle begins. Because if I don't recharge my battery at night, and then I go into the next day and I give 120%, not going to work. So sleeping disorders, then all sorts of physical pain, also quite typical, are headaches, migraines, maybe visual disorders, or feeling fuzzy, not being able to concentrate. Stomach and digestion is also one of those weak spots when it comes to stress. So if you have problems in the digestive tract, for example. So that was the body. You can basically, whenever you notice symptoms about your body where okay, I didn't have that in the past. This is new. I don't know this. No, this is a new symptom. Then on an emotional level, if you notice changes in your emotional being in terms of maybe you feel sad a lot more, maybe you've noticed that you can't enjoy things anymore, maybe you're closer to tears. And we're not talking about having a bad day. We all have bad days. But when you notice changes in yourself over a couple of periods, then it's definitely that moment, Meltem, where we should really, really pay attention, take a closer look. Changes in behavior can also be a warning signal. Maybe I'm more aggressive in work. maybe I don't recognize myself, start snapping at people. That's not me. I don't snap at people, but you can't help it. You're just under such pressure that you start snapping. Or the other thing is maybe you completely withdraw because it's all too much. You just pull back. You don't want to see anyone. You don't want to meet your friends. So pay attention to your body talking to you in terms of what symptoms does your organism display. And when you notice clear changes, then be assured that your system has been in overstrain for a long time. And then it's very important to do something, Then it's important to put on the break and take a closer look.
Can you recommend techniques like in meditation or something to reduce stress in that situation?
Of course, things like all the things we associate with stress relief, like meditation, like sports, all helpful and beneficial, definitely. Possibly, maybe not enough. When we look at how stress and strain is created, there's basically 3 different categories we can look at. One is the actual situation that stresses me. Maybe it's the high workload. Maybe it's the way my boss is. Maybe it's the conflict situation work. So this is what we call the stressor. We can take a look. Is there anything I can do there to change the situation, to reduce the stressor? That's often difficult. You can't change your boss, you can't change your partner. Maybe you can talk to your boss to reduce workload, but it can be quite difficult to change something there, but it's always worth taking a look. The second category we can look at is what is my contribution to my stress? Because stress is the result of my interpretation of the situation. There is no such thing as objective stress. Everybody will experience stress in a different way. How do I think about this situation? And that's where it gets really interesting. And it's also at that point, maybe talk to a colleague, talk to somebody else who's in a very similar situation and ask them, how do you look at this? How do you deal with this? This can be quite eye-opening to understand that how I interpret a situation, this is where I can start changing something about the way I view the situation that I'm in. Now, this is the second aspect. And the third one, and that's when we come to meditation and sports, is the category, what can I do to, on a biological level, to reduce the level of stress hormones in my system? And that works with sports, that works with meditation, that works with things I enjoy doing, that works by meeting friends. So ideally, we look at all 3 pillars. Where can I change something in order to make the situation more manageable for me?
Mm-hmm. And does it mean if you're a performer for many years, then you also have a social identity because you got all your projects and you have a good budget and you're financially safe and everything. So would it mean if you reduce that you give up your identity?
Good question. That's a very, very interesting question. So the question is, what is the identity that you would like to have? Who do you want to be? And is that image that you have of yourself, is that maybe just something that the outside your colleagues see in you, but that doesn't actually fit to the way you are? Or is it an image that you have about yourself? Because we all have, every one of us has a subjective view on life. Everything that happens out there, same situation, 10 people will, witness 10 people will witness the same situation, and you will likely get maybe 10 different or maybe 7 different views on the same situation. Everybody views the world through their personal set of interpretive glasses. And how we view the world is affected by genetics play a role, our upbringing plays a role, how we grew up plays a role, the experiences we've had in life play a role. Every one of us has their individual mix of interpretation with which we view the world. And that's where we can take a look and see, okay, how I see the world today is only one way of looking at it. There's other ways of looking at the same situation. And that's when we talk about mental stress management, is basically exactly that. I look at a situation that drives me insane, it drives me crazy, and it's putting me under such pressure, changing the perspective and look at it from another point of view, look at it from another perspective and see maybe that works better for me.
But I understand that when you want to get out of the situation of this burn-on situation, or maybe even burnout situation, you have to think about yourself, to deal a lot with your inner self, and to take a decision, because there was this question, what can I do, or what are the last signs, even when I'm realizing there's something changing in my attitude or my body. I have to decide that I put my what is this? Yeah, I look at it closely. I look at it closely, and then take a decision what to do with it. Change anything or not change anything. And I think this might be something we are fearing. We don't like to do this, to take these decisions.
Take a closer look.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of courage to take a closer look, but it's an important point, because if I want to change something about the situation I'm in, because I realize this can't go on like this. I know it's a question of time. It can't go on like this. It's highly recommendable to take some time out and to really start go into self-reflection and also go into self-observation, especially in high periods of stress. We're like, we're in this robotic mode, you know, we just react to a lot of the things that are happening around us. And if I want to change that, it's important to take a step out of my daily hustle and bustle and take a look at my life from another perspective, take a step back and take a look at the bigger picture, let's say. Because if I want to really change something, first of all, I need to make myself aware of what is the issue here. What is the reason why I feel the way I feel, and what can I change about it? So taking some time out for yourself, do some self-reflection, do some self-observation is definitely a very good starting point. And we see it in companies all the time. What do companies do once a year or maybe twice a year? They take the top management and they go to a pretty location and they talk about strategy. That's what they do. They take a step back and they look at the big picture. And why don't we do that with ourselves? I think it's an excellent idea to also do that with our own lives. Take some time out. Maybe it's only an afternoon. Maybe you can cut yourself free a Sunday or maybe even a whole weekend. But take some time out on your own with no distraction and start at this point. Where am I at? Where would I like to be? And what are the things where I can start to change something? And so it's about reflecting and also critically evaluating my situation. And again, Inken, you mentioned it earlier. If you have the possibility to do this with a counselor, with an EAP counselor, or with a coach, it's definitely recommendable to do that, to use that. But if you are a person who's generally quite self-reflected, of course, you can also do that on your own, but it's in any case beneficial to get help from this point. So that's the starting point. And of course, there's some other things we can do, but I don't want to jump ahead now, Inken.
Well, go on, Madam. Are there any more questions?
Yes, I have two more questions. One of that is for all women of us, because it's about the menopause, and the symptoms can be look like the same as from a burnout. So how can you differentiate? And the second question is, if you have a colleague and she's like a classical workaholic, how can you help her or him?
Okay, Now, the first question: how do I know if the menopause is the reason, or if I'm on the brink of burnout? Now, I'm no expert on menopause. That's definitely a question for your doctor, but it is. We do know that during the menopause, women are a lot more susceptible to stress. So during menopause, they're less able to cope with stress the way they were able to do in the past. So that does play a role, but that's definitely a question for your doctor. And the second, please remind me the second question, Weltem.
To help a colleague.
Yes, to help a colleague. Now, what we can do is address a person that you care about. Say you have a colleague and you notice or you think that they show signs of exhaustion, they show signs of maybe, or they show symptoms that would suggest they maybe suffer from chronic stress or maybe even burnout. All you can do is to just mention it to them in terms of, hey, you know, I really appreciate you as my colleague, and I really enjoy working with you. Recently, I've noticed, you know, a couple of concrete situations where you notice a change in their behavior. And then you can express concern. You know, I was just wondering if you're doing okay. I was a little worried about you, and you know that in our company you can use the AP service. Sometimes it's very beneficial to let somebody else know what you've noticed, because people are affected by burnout. They can be in a tunnel. They do feel that something is going out of sync, but they're unable to stop themselves. So when you have a person tipping on your shoulder and saying, "Isn't there something I've noticed? Is it okay if I tell you that?" You know, it's a good idea to get permission from the person. Is it okay if I share a couple of observations with you? Show concern, offer support, but in the end, we can't force anybody to do anything. All we can do is point it out, express our concern. What the person does with that, we can't influence. That's, you know, we have to accept that maybe they brush it off or they don't want to hear. That's possible. But if you are concerned, express it. And maybe this can be actually quite beneficial to the person. When we talk to managers, we actually, managers actually do have also legally a responsibility to pay attention to symptoms of overstrain. But I can also do that as a colleague if I notice something and I'm concerned.
I have another question. If you have a diagnosed burnout illness, how long or how can you get out of it, and how long does it usually take?
Now, when we talk about recovery after a diagnosed burnout, first of all, at that stage, with burnout, what's important is to basically leave the workplace, you know, go on sick leave for a while, because the ability to regenerate is highly impaired during a burnout. So the person, first of all, needs to relearn to regenerate. Maybe you've had an experience in the past with an electronic gadget that if it's not being charged enough, I don't know the term in English, in German we say tiefenentladen. So if the battery is damaged, even if you plug it in, nothing's going to happen. So when we talk about burnout, it's pretty much the same thing. Maybe you're on sick leave and you do things for relaxation, but your battery is not going to recharge immediately. Your system needs to slowly relearn to recharge again. And at that point, definitely not something to be done on your own, but to be done with professional help. And then slowly, step by step, the person learns to reassess the situation. The person relearns certain attitudes and behaviors, also takes a critical look at the work situation. And how long this takes, again, can be highly different. With a severe burnout, it can definitely take up to a year, maybe even take up to 2 years, but this depends highly on the individual situation. But it's also a process, you know, just as being or reaching that point of a final burnout is a process that can take a long time. The regeneration process also takes a long time. That's not something that's done within a couple of weeks, definitely not.
I know there are some more questions, Meltem, but Dorothea, I'm looking at the time.
Yeah, the clock, yes.
Yeah, the clock. There are two things I'd like to come back to, and this is this self-reflection, because I think this can be a major clue to feeling more relief or to getting along with the situation. And if there are any other things I can do to make me feel better.
Now, when it comes to self-reflection, we actually gonna introduce a tool that you can use. But before we get to that, I've prepared a couple of ideas of what is really important to when you realize that you're in this spiral of chronic stress and exhaustion, things you can do basically ASAP, immediately. When you close this webinar, things where you can sit down and make a little plan of how you can incorporate that into your everyday life. And the first is I've written them on little cards. I'm going to hold them up, and if you want, you can do a screenshot or maybe use your camera to take a picture. And the first one is put your foot on the brake, not in terms of braking completely, but slowing down. Slowing down is the first step. If I want to take a look at the bigger picture, I can't do this. If I'm rushing around like crazy, I need to slow down a little to make some room, make some time to even get to the point where I can start thinking about my situation. And very important is the second one, and I've already talked about that earlier, because what a lot of people under chronic stress do is they reduce all the things in their lives that have the quality to regenerate them, like sports, like quality time with friends, like, eating good food, enjoying things in their spare time. Start taking your needs seriously again. Your basic needs for regeneration, your need for social contact, your interests, your hobbies, things that excite you. It's important to bring that back into your life. They're not luxury things. They're essential for your well-being. We need a counterweight. We need a counterweight to all these demands and challenges out there. So looking after yourself, self-care is not egoistical, but it's an essential thing that we have to do in order to keep our batteries recharged. So slowing down, self-care, paying attention to your needs, taking them seriously. And in line with that is, I hope you can read this, find yourself slots for me time. What you do with important things, you put them in your diary. If you have important appointments, you put it in your diary. You are very important yourself. Your health is very important. So maybe we should start putting me time in our diary. Because if we don't, what's going to happen? Everybody else will take our time. And this is my responsibility. Nobody else is going to do this for me. Your boss is not going to go, don't do the extra work. Go home and look after yourself. My kids are not going to do that. This is my responsibility to reserve time for myself in order to do the things that nourish me, that regenerate me, that recharge my battery, that put a smile back on my face. Maybe think back to what you used to do in the past that gave you a lot of joy, and start reactivating some of your old hobbies. And finally, a fourth thing, which is also in this context very important, setting boundaries. Setting boundaries. Some people you can always rely on. Whenever you need something, you call them and they're going to help you. But do we know at what cost? Do we know at which cost other people help us out all the time? And that's the thing. If we don't set boundaries, if we don't set boundaries ourselves, somebody else is going to do it for us. And the boundaries somebody else sets for us are usually not in line with our own well-being. So setting your own boundaries, saying, up until here and no further is also an important aspect.
Thank you, Dorothea. Dorothea, thank you, because I think these are very, very important things we can take home and think about, and maybe put into our lives.
Put into our lives and then see how making the time. It's like it's not going to happen on its own, and this is where, despite all what responsibilities work have and your boss, and yes, there's a lot of external factors that affect me. Yes, I can't change those. But what I can change is take on self-responsibility, setting the boundaries, making time for myself. That's something that I can do and that nobody else can do for me.
And Dorothea,
and there's one more thing. Yeah.
Would you say that there is that some people can like ignore the burnout and the pain, as for example elite athletes do? If you are doing sports a lot and then you ignore your pain.
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of people ignore it for a certain time. I don't have any, can't go into detail on this question, but yeah, some people are very good at ignoring symptoms, but eventually your organism will give you the stop sign. Eventually, if it's ongoingly too much, at one point your system go, okay, if you're not going to listen, I'm going to shut you down. That's the collapse we talk about when it comes to progressive burnout.
And would you say, or another question is, what is the average age for a burnout? Are the people getting always younger and younger?
Oh, that's, to be honest, I don't have a current statistic on the age categories, but people who are we call this area in our lives between kind of 30 and 40, where we have a lot of responsibilities. We have maybe small family ourselves, maybe we have elderly people. We're at the peak of our career, so there's certain life periods which are maybe possibly more at risk, but I'm afraid I don't have a statistic separated by age group.
Okay. Any more questions, Meltem?
No.
The last 3 minutes. And
the last question.
Genau. Yeah. Dorothea?
Yeah, maybe just coming back to, we talked about self-reflection, that it's important to take some time out. And maybe if you're listening to this today and you're in a position where you feel, oh boy, I think this, I think I want to look at this. Maybe the first step is to open your diary now and fix yourself a date with yourself. Maybe fix yourself a date with yourself right now.
Right now.
As a first concrete thing. Just an idea that popped up.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great idea, I think. And we have 2 minutes left, and I'd say we just stop this live talk here, and you can all use these 2 minutes to find a date with yourself in your diary. And Dorothea, I want to thank you very much for this live talk. Really, I appreciate it very much. And I feel good now, better than before, and have so many ideas what to do and how to take care of myself. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Inken, for that feedback. Happy to hear that. Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Inken, can you maybe say if somebody missed that live talk and wants to watch it afterwards, how one can do it?
It'll take us a few days, but you can see the recording on our YouTube channel. This is the easiest thing how you can see them, and on our website for the Mein ERP customers. But you can find live talks on INSITE YouTube channel of INSITE, and there's a special part where you can see the live talks, the recordings of the live talks. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks a lot to the attendees of this live talk. Thank you for joining us today, and
Yes.
maybe we see you, no, you see us at the next live talk in English. This will be in June. So yeah, maybe we see us, and thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks a lot, Dorothea. Thank you, Meltem.
Thank you for
Thank
joining.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.